Hello and welcome to the Live Life Extraordinary podcast. I'm your host, Bianca DeLuco. And in this week's episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about motivation. We've just closed out the year of 2025 and are stepping into the year of 2026. And it seems to happen that every single year, people set these New Year's resolutions or these New Year's intentions where we're really good at working on writing our book or prioritizing moving or eating really healthy for a few days, a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But then as motivation of the new year wears off, we find ourselves stuck back in our original patterns and our original habits that maybe we were looking to no longer participate in. So this is going to teach you a little bit about how to stay motivated even when motivation doesn't exist any longer. So to start, it's important to understand motivation and how it works. Many of us think that when we feel motivated to do something, then we'll take action, and from that action, we'll get the results that we desire to experience, right? So when I feel motivated to clean my house, that's when I'm going to go ahead and do all the chores around my house. When I feel motivated to exercise, that's when I'm going to start working out. But the truth is that motivation actually works much differently than that. The way motivation actually works is that when we have some sort of action that we're taking in our lives and it produces a result, that result inspires and motivates us to continue taking more action. So, for example, if you're someone who's setting a New Year's resolution or goal to lose some weight, and you're consistently working out and you're eating healthy and you get on the scale and you notice that you've lost 1 or 2 pounds, that gives you some motivation to say, hey, this is working, I'm doing a good job, and keep on going. But you notice that when people in their exercise journeys get to a point where they plateau, where they're no longer losing weight, they're either stabilizing or even starting to gain weight as they gain muscle, they start to lose some of that momentum and that motivation to keep going. So this is really important to recognize that our motivation isn't always going to precede our actions, that sometimes our actions and our results precede motivation. But if that's true and you need action and results to give you motivation to take more action, how do we even get started? A couple of things that we can do. One is to really focus on the process instead of the goal itself, right? I read the book Atomic Habits a couple years ago, and one of the things that really stuck with me from that book was the idea of if you were playing some sort of sport, let's say football for an example, you wouldn't spend your whole game looking at the scoreboard and watching the score. You would spend the whole game focusing on how you're moving and how you're breathing and where you're going and what you have to do in order to win the game, right? So winners and losers have the same goals. Goals are not what matters, it's the process that matters. So you have to find something that's going to set you up for success so that you can keep making progress even when motivation wears off. A couple of things that you can do is by looking at your habits and assessing which habits you participate in that are really setting you up for the life you desire to live this year. And then also if there's habits that you know you need to implement but haven't been able to implement yet, think about how you can make the least amount of resistance around those habits so that you can remain consistent. I did a whole episode a couple of weeks ago on SMART goal framework, which talked about making our goals more measurable and achievable. When we do that, let's say you're, instead of saying, oh, I want to work out more this year, you say, I want to exercise for 30 minutes 3 times a week for the whole month of January. Then at the end of January, you can look back and say, did I exercise for 30 minutes 3 times a week every single week? And you'll be able to say yes or no because it's measurable. But because it's time oriented too, you can sit there and look at that and have the motivation to keep taking more action through the month of February, through the month of March, especially when you're focusing on the process of the goals versus the goal itself. And this sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Because the whole point of having a goal is to reach the goal, right? You don't set a goal of exercising more because it's fun to do so, unless you do like exercise, which some people do. You have some sort of motive in mind. You want to be healthier. You want to lose weight. You want to be stronger. You want to feel more confident, whatever it is, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive feeling to, instead of focusing on that goal, to focus on the process. But If you're focusing on a goal, sometimes it can feel kind of like a moving target where it's like, okay, let's say, because the weight example we just had, my weight's starting to fluctuate. I'm not losing anymore, I'm maintaining, or maybe even I'm gaining. So that starts to feel demotivating. But if you're focusing on, okay, my goal is to move 4 times a week instead of 3 times a week now, it's really about just getting a little bit better and refining our goals to keep going in the direction we want to go to help us stay motivated. Now, I have this little hack that I like to do for motivation when I'm feeling unmotivated to do anything at all. And it's called the 10-minute game. And so what you can do is set an alarm on your phone, wherever, for 10 minutes. And what you do is you take as much action towards your goal in that 10-minute time period as you can. Sometimes it's hard to get motivated when we have a task that's really large, right? Like, let's say you're going to write a book. Writing an entire book could feel really big and hard to achieve. Or let's say you're going to declutter your home. Going through your entire home, item by item, room by room, could feel really big and out of sight, that moving target. So instead, setting this 10-minute timer and doing as much as you can in that 10 minutes, what that does is it gets us into action, right? An object in motion stays in motion, an object at rest stays at rest. So when you set that timer and you take as much action as you can in that 10-minute time period, at the end of 10 minutes, you'll have 2 choices. One is to stop. Maybe you're not feeling as motivated and inspired as you'd hope to. Maybe you're really exhausted or burnt out and it's just not working for you. You can recognize that 10 minutes of progress is better than no progress at all. You can celebrate that 10 minutes and move on with your day and your life. Or the second thing, which happens more frequently that I notice, is that little bit of action that you take creates a result. And that result that you experience then promotes that feeling of motivation. And once the motivation arises, you find yourself taking more action. So you can do this with exercise too. Maybe you get home from a really hard day and you're really exhausted and you just don't feel like doing it. It's really easy to convince ourselves to do just 10 minutes, right? I've seen people talk about this as like a 15-minute timer or a 20-minute timer, but sometimes that even feels too big. Like maybe I don't have the capacity to do 20 minutes of something, but I almost always convince myself to do at least 10. And so you set this timer because it's easy to convince yourself to do it and to get in motion. We're not relying on motivation at this point. We're just putting in action. Also, when we have the timer, it creates a sense of urgency that helps us make more progress too. And so then you start taking the action produces a result, and 9 out of 10 times at the end of that 10-minute timer, I continue going with whatever it is that I started. I do this when my house gets really out of sorts. Like every room feels really overwhelming and I feel like, how can I possibly get all of this done? I set my 10-minute timer, and at the end of 10 minutes, I usually notice that I was able to accomplish way more than I even anticipated being able to accomplish. And so it motivates me to do even more that same day. It also works. I did this a lot with exercise because I had a really difficult relationship with exercise. Like I just did not want to. I did not enjoy it, didn't want to. So what I would do is I would find little 10-minute pockets of time to just like convince myself to do it. So it started off where like if I was making dinner and I was leaving like a pot of water to boil or something was baking in the oven, I would say, okay, so for the next 10 minutes while this is happening, I'm going to do some light weights or something like that. Or when I wake up, I'm just going to do 10 minutes of stretching. Or after a meal, I'm just going to walk for 10 minutes. And those little pockets of time kept me motivated of like 10 minutes is easy. I could do 10 minutes of everything. I'm pretty sure I could stand on one leg for 10 minutes if I had to. And so I kept relying on this building of almost what I call a micro habit that helped me remain motivated to keep taking progress, to keep maintaining my home, to keep working on my book, to keep exercising, to keep making progress in my business, to keep reading books. Like, so all of these really big things that felt too overwhelming to achieve all at once that I didn't really feel motivated to do due to stress or burnout, I was able to achieve by breaking it down into a smaller, more achievable goal that as I achieved it gave me the motivation to keep on going. So I hope that you keep this in mind as you go through the next couple of weeks and couple of months, that if you find yourself falling off the gym schedule that you started really strong with at the start of the year, that one, you give yourself patience and grace. You're a human being and you're carrying a lot of things. It's impossible to be motivated and operating at 100% all of the time. Instead, think about how you can keep things sustainable and how you can trick yourself into staying motivated even when motivation starts to wear off. So thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Live Life Extraordinary podcast. A couple of weeks ago, I did put out a SMART goal planner and tracker that helps you use some of the tools that I'm discussing to really set yourself up for success in the new year. You can find the link to that in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to get more episodes. Coming up in the next few months, I'm going to be creating a course on manifestation and basically how I transformed my entire life through the 4 pillars, which I define as self-care, self-healing, spirituality, and sustainable goals and actions. And that's really the framework that I've used to manifest everything that I desired, everything from travel to a 6-figure business to my dream car and everything in between, my health, pretty much literally everything. I'm also going to be doing a course on nervous system. So if you're someone who's like, yeah, all of this sounds great, but I'm too exhausted and stressed and anxious and burnt out to make this happen, this is going to be ways that you can sustainably reset your nervous system so that you can start to take action towards the things that you actually desire. We can only go as far in life as our nervous system feels comfortable going. So that's going to help you maintain your nervous system so that you can make that progress too. So there's a lot of courses and programs coming up, as well as more podcast episodes that are really going to set you up for success in 2026. So make sure you're subscribed. If there's a topic you'd like to see on the podcast or a question that you have for me, feel free to send me an email at info@biancadeluco.com. I'm happy to hear your feedback, and I respond to every single email that comes in. So thank you so much again for tuning into this episode. If you know somebody it might help, feel free to forward it on, and I cannot wait to connect with you again soon.